Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we've just finished breaking down all of the NBA action from last night. We are going to move into Major League Baseball. There was some massive injury news yesterday. Mike Trout tore his meniscus. We're going to talk about him, the Angels, and what that means for the rest of the MLB in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else watching around the world to see. If you want to control what we talk about here on the show, go to that link, gsmcpodcast.net. We appreciate anything that you do give. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this show. Continue to follow along. We appreciate all of you for watching. If you have anything you'd like to contribute, you can leave a comment, leave a donation. Like I was saying, we're going to move into baseball, though. We appreciate all of your support. Mike Trout. Mike Trout tears his meniscus, and it is a shame. I just want to start off by saying this. Mike Trout is one of the greatest baseball players of all time. He's in conversation. You can put him in conversations to be the greatest baseball player, of all time. His just ever since he came into the league, he's been a dominant force, and he unfortunately has never won anything. And a little bit of that is because of injury. A lot of bit of that is because of the team that has been put around him, and that's not to say that he hasn't had help. You know, he had Shohei Ohtani for years. They went out and they got Anthony Rendon, but what they've always lacked is pitching. You know, with Shohei Ohtani, they had an ace for one. They had one elite pitcher, but having one pitcher can only do so much, and when the rest of your pitching isn't there or continues to get hurt, it's always been an issue for the Angels, and it's really held back a lot of Mike Trout's career. Mike Trout. He says he wants to be an Angel forever. He's a guy that deserves to win. Point blank, period. He deserves to win. He is incredibly loyal. He's never going to leave the Angels. And he said that as much a million times this season. He's off to one of his best starts in a really long time. You know, we haven't seen the kind of start that Mike Trout had been on to this season out of Mike Trout since he was the best player in the league, 5-6 years ago, 10 years ago. Mike Trout is a very, very special player in baseball, and, he was leading the league in home runs. He was having a little renaissance to his career. Not that he really went too far away, but this injury is going to keep him out. They say he'll be able to come back. This meniscus injury, he's torn his meniscus. They say he's going to be able to come back before the season is over. At least that's what the GM says. But with where the Angels are, it probably won't be worth it to have to rush him back and risk more injuries. And even if he does come back, it won't be until near the end of the season. This is a multiple month-long injury. Now, we've seen this in some basketball players, them come back from meniscus injuries in like 6 weeks. I don't think that Mike Trout is going to do that. Maybe maybe it's a different kind of surgery that they've had before, but he's going to have surgery on his meniscus, his torn meniscus, to attempt to come back this season. It's going to be an interesting finish because, just looking at this season, the Angels already are really bad, right? No one, I feel like, is going to argue with that. The Angels are not very good at baseball. Mike Trout has been the shining star of the team. They're 11-19. They're fourth in their division. They're behind Oakland, Oakland has actually been a lot better than I personally have been giving them credit for. Better than the Angels and Houston isn't really saying much, at least this season. But, the Angels just... It sucks. It really does. Because Mike Trout, like I said, was having a really good season. He was getting power back. His average wasn't pretty, but he wasn't getting the greatest of ball and play luck either. You know, Mike Trout, very, very good at baseball. It's quite a shame that he is done, and injuries have been bothering him his entire career. Getting back to more of a general standpoint on him, injuries have been a nagging issue for Mike Trout for his entire career. You know, ever since he got his first big injury, it seems like every other season he can't go 162 games, and that's really hard to do. You know, I'm never gonna knock a guy for getting hurt because it's not like they get hurt on purpose. You know, it's not like Mike Trout's like, okay, guys, I think I'm good for a couple months. I'm gonna get hurt now. He doesn't do that. He doesn't sit there and say I don't want to play. I'm gonna get hurt. Mike Trout is a guy that loves baseball. He loves playing for the Angels. He loves doing this. You know, there's a reason that he's refusing to leave the Angels, and it really is a shame that he keeps getting hurt. Someone brought up this point in our production meeting today. Our baseball podcast guy Sam. And if you want to go check out his show, go do that. But you know, it brings up the question of what his legacy is going to be, because he's a guy that has won so many MVPs. I believe he's won 4 or 5 MVPs already, and the reason he hasn't won more is because of voter fatigue. He's been dominant every single season of his career, at least when he plays. And you know, I was saying you could make the argument he's the greatest baseball player of all time, definitely the greatest of our generation. And he has only been to one wild card game ever in his entire career. It's interesting to think about with Mike Trout especially. You know, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, how are we going to remember his legacy? What's his legacy going to be? Because he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. There's no doubt in my mind about that. If he isn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, something has gone wrong with the voting system, and some changes need to be made, right? But he also doesn't have the team success that'll put him in like that legendary status, that he won't be remembered for these teams. He will be remembered for an individual, and maybe that's better. You know, maybe that's better for a legacy, that you're remembered as an individual than being remembered as the greatest on a team. Maybe that makes you stick out more. But it's interesting. It's always interesting to see how much the success of your team or lack of success for your team affects your legacy in the future. Because you can look back on guys that never won rings, and it's a lot more apparent in the NBA with talk about who's better than who, or the NFL when we have these kind of discussions. That a lot of people go back and say, "Hey, he never won a ring, so you can't. My guy's better. He won a ring," and I think that's a stupid argument just in general, because sports are inherently, or at least these baseball, football, basketball, hockey, these are inherently team games, and no matter how good you are, it doesn't matter if the rest of your team isn't there for you. You can only do so much. Baseball especially. You're one of 9 guys on the field. You're one of 18 guys on the field at, I guess, 10 at any time. And, you know, you only get called to do your job when it's hit your direction as an outfielder, or once every 3 innings when you get a chance to bat. You know? So you in baseball, more than a lot of other sports, you can only do so much as one person. And I don't know. I'm interested to see how history remembers Mike Trout, because in the moment, it's very easy to sit here and say Mike Trout is one of the greatest baseball players of all time. But in the future, people can say, "Oh, he was injury prone." He's a big what if. He really is, and it's a shame because he deserves to win, and I hope he does. He's not leaving the Angels, which is a shame. I kind of hope he does at the end of his contract. Sign a 1-year deal with a contender. You know, win a ring. But he's never going to do that. He's an Angel for life. And I respect that almost more. It shows a lot about him as a person. and his character that he cares more about. That he just wants to stay there rather than win one. And I'm sure his legacy will be just fine. We've had this long discussion, but I'm sure his legacy will be just fine. Again, not too worried about him. He's one of the greatest baseball players of all time. The stats speak for itself if you go and take a look at that. You know, career stats in like 10 seasons. You know, almost 400 home runs, almost 1,000 RBIs, almost 1,000 walks. He's really good. He's really, really good. Anyway, we're going to move on. And in our fourth and final segment, we are going to talk about the Bengals and the NFL. We're going to talk about their interesting situation with contracts, with star players on offense and defense. So stick around for that, and we'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.